Bypassing. Hey, did the link that I posted work? All right, I give up. I think it's recording what we're doing right now. Let me double check. It should be recording it at least to some extent of what we're doing. I'm just going to share my screen. Sounds like there's still more feedback though. Okay. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen, or do you just see a picture of me? Okay. Share screen here. And do you see my screen now? Okay. What are you laughing at? Oh, that's the letter that I wrote to the teacher about the grades. Is that what you're laughing at? Okay. I'm gonna try and not make it so you see like a ton of me, but let's go to the agenda and let's go through that. Okay. Hey. We've been having a lot of technical difficulties, so don't worry about it. Right now I'm recording the screencast through my computer to the YouTube Hangouts thing, so I'm hoping that it's gonna be right. It says it's recording. So we'll go with that. All right, let's have an opening prayer. Does anybody want to give the opening prayer? Who's I? Okay, Mark. Thanks. Amen. Okay. Garrett, right? Okay. If there's lots of extra noise, if you hear dog noise through two speakers, it's because Steven's my husband and the dogs bark, then we both hear it. So hopefully we won't have too much craziness. We're in separate rooms. Okay. So the case study this week about what Google learned from their I'm in the wrong screen again, right? No, there we go. We'll close that. Okay, so what Google learned case study basically went over that they had been trying to figure out what makes an effective team versus an ineffective team, and essentially they came up with that there was no exact answer to start with until they figured out that there's something called psychological safety and kind of like cultural norms of the team. And once they figured that out, then they were able to they were able to fix the problem, kind of, or at least understand the problem. Do you guys have anything else to put in on the summary of the case than that? Okay. So this one doesn't have us picking the case apart as quite as much as the last one did. It's mostly talking about like our experience with group behaviors, key like teams and things, those kinds of things. One of the things that it asks is, from your personal experience, what have been the key behaviors in an effective team? So what are some things that you guys have seen in teams that have been more effective? Okay. Um, so by nonverbal communication, what do you mean by like just I have an idea of what that is, but just what do you mean by nonverbal? Okay. I think that's a great point that a lot of times like our nonverbal language can have a lot to do with it. That was one of the things that the article touched on was like basically the like how you interpret people's eyes and what they're thinking and feeling, basically how their by how their eyes look. Um, so that's a good point. What about anybody else? What about um, other behaviors you may have seen that make an effective team? Sure, I agree. Speaking of which, how's your wife doing? Oh, that's good. His wife's expecting like what, any day now? Is this baby number one? Awesome. That's awesome. Do you know if it's a boy or a girl? That's exciting. Awesome. Yeah, so I found that as well, that when you have a little bit more friendliness and that kind of stuff, that helps a lot. Um, helps with the flow of things as well, I think. So what do group norms have to do with the effective team building? Let's talk about first, maybe we can define like what a group norm would be like. Um, okay. And now one of the things that it said is that those processes and rules can be spoken or unspoken, right? Right. That kind of as people go through meetings that they can have um, their body language plays into it a lot. I had a thing. So one of the things that I've written down was about like just paradigms with group norms and how like basically you get an idea of what your group should be and you kind of get in the rut of that. And sometimes when somebody else new comes in, that can kind of give a shift in the group or a group paradigm, and it can kind of throw the group off for a while. Have you guys seen like paradigm shifts in groups that you've worked with, and how would you pull yourself back from that? So I guess what I'm asking is, how would you handle it when a new, like if a new group member comes in and kind of throws the whole balance of your team off? How do you get things back into the right way? But I think that would be a good idea. I mean, if I don't know who all served a mission. I served a mission. I know Steve did. Um, but even if you have a friend that's coming to church with you, right, you're gonna kind of prep them like this is what you're gonna expect and this is what you're gonna have. People that would normally be loud and boisterous outside of sacrament meeting are usually more subdued because they fall into the group norm of sacrament meeting, right? So I think that we could definitely prep somebody from the outside for that. Thanks. Um, I think that one of the things I tell the kids in my Sunday school class is that everything relates back to the gospel. And sometimes we'll play a game like Stump the Teacher, like see if you can find something for me that doesn't relate to the gospel and I can't find in the scriptures. And they never really can because it all relates back. Um, and I think that there's a lot that we can learn from that to apply in other ways. Um, what else did I want to touch on? I'm a little scattered tonight just because of the headache. I've had a headache and stuff like that. So if you guys see something that you want to discuss that I haven't said, please jump in and give your 2 cents worth because my brain is scattered. I think that makes sense. That yeah, when we kind of pull in outside things and we're able to discuss, like we said before, where we're coming from, um, then we understand things better. Um, with the homeschool co-op group that I go to, for the last probably year, I've been attending a moms in prayer group, and it's a Christian family co-op group, and so it's mostly mainstream Christians. I think I might be the only LDS person there now. There used to be at least one other family. Um, anyway, every time that they have somebody new come in, our group leader is really good about saying, "Oh, let's go around the table and share something." She'll change it up from um, what did you like today? It was like, what did you like about this year, and what would you do differently about with your school year? So, kind of sharing some things and helping us to get some personal information out, and build on things that we can share and grow. So I think that that's a helpful thing to do. Right. Definitely. I think to start with, anything that would get HR involved is not appropriate. Right. I think that part of it is to get people to understand where you're coming from as well. Like if you've got stage 4 cancer, you're going to have days where you don't come to work, or you're going to have days where you just feel so bad and your brain is not working and you cannot function. And it helps for your team to know why you're having a hard time, because honestly, if you're doing that and your team doesn't know why, they're just going to think that you're being lazy, or you're being not a team player, or unkind, or whatever. So I think that it's really important to understand that, when you have something that impacts your job or has a potential to impact your job, if you can share it in an appropriate manner, then you should, so that people will have more compassion for you. Right. Right. Um, let's see. So one of the things we're supposed to talk about is what our current group norms are for this group, spoken and unspoken, etc. I mean, this is the first time we've actually met with everybody at once, but we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit. So what do you think some group norms are for us? I could even write them down. Okay, so what do you guys think? Okay. I think another group norm is that we already have the gospel underlying as a commonality. So that kind of, I think when you're with a group that's you have something like that that's that strong of part of your identity with you, that it already sets a whole set of unspoken rules. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously in some groups that I've been in, like in some work settings, I mean, there's a lot of conversations that have to happen about, hey, there shouldn't be profanity here. And I mean, that was 18 years ago, when I was working at a corporate type place. Now it's even worse. I mean, I've been in meetings with supposed professional organizations, and the presenter is using profanity. Um, and I think that when you have a LDS group, that's not usually something that you have to throw out there, hey, we're not going to use that kind of language, you know? Right. Not exactly a very good example. Yes. I'm sorry again about the technical difficulties tonight. I don't know what the deal was. All right. We'll figure it out on week 13. That's awesome. I think that also being willing to laugh together, is a good thing. Be willing to joke and have a sense of humor about. I guess not everybody can have a sense of humor about themselves, but I think that that's helpful to any team is if you can have a sense of humor about yourself. It's a big deal. Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, you better come up with something. We'll all be quiet for a minute so Mark can come up with something. Here's one for you, Mark. How about just being understanding of like personal and family situations? Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah, I think so. Speaking of which, let's talk about what times might work. If Thursday doesn't work out, what other times might work for you guys? Wednesday PM? Yeah. Wednesdays or Thursdays, like any other day that would work for you or time. Like, like last week when Mark and I met, it was at 11 o'clock in the daytime during his lunch hour. Yeah, because you have meetings sometimes. All right. Yeah. How rude. Tell him I said tell him I said no. Okay. I have no problem with doing that. Okay. Garrett, what about you? Are there other times that work for you besides just Thursday night? Okay. So then if we what was that? Okay. Then we will shoot for Thursday nights and then if necessary Wednesday nights and I could always bring Steve up to speed on the meeting or other things of that nature. We could talk about it before or after to get his what he would have on there as well. Or we could meet even after he's done with his visits. What time zones are you guys on? Um, Michelle, you're on Pacific time, right? Okay, and Mark, you're on Mountain time. All right, and Garrett. Okay, and then what was that? Okay, so that would probably work out that if we could meet like after the meeting, except I know that Michelle, you said that you need to be done by about 9. Is that right? Okay. All right. Well, if we ever need to meet on a Wednesday, I suppose what we could do is we could start at like 8 or 8:30ish Pacific time, and then Steve can jump in when he gets back from meetings if necessary. If that works for you guys. Okay. Um, so one of the things we should talk about is what does psychological safety mean in a team and how it can increase overall effectiveness. Okay. I agree. There's a lot of little things that can add up to somebody not feeling accepted and we want to be understanding of how people feel and where they're coming from. If somebody has this speech impediment, you shouldn't be making fun of them for the speech impediment. You shouldn't be making fun of them for anything, but let alone, something that they can't control. And it's the same with, anything else. So that is a good point. I think also psychological safety, like, I don't know, if part of me, just the term of it kind of bugs me with kind of the whole um overly sensitive environment that we live in now. It seems like people are like, oh, this is my safe zone and I have to be safe about this and that. And I think that it can be taken too far. Um, it's like if you're in a meeting and somebody uses a word that you don't care for that's, usually a benign word, and you shut down because you don't feel psychologically safe because somebody calls a chair stupid, then, I don't know. It just seems like it can be taken too far, in my opinion. Um, so I wonder what can be done to try and help keep it from going too far or being like overdone in a group. Yeah. They're both good ways of saying it though, because it helps to put things in multiple ways. So I think that's good that, you do need to give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that they have positive intent. We had a Relief Society president that our daughter happened to be taking violin lessons from, and she always needed somebody to talk and kind of unload problems on, and she was usually pretty discreet about it. But she's just the kind of person that just gets really upset over things that just shouldn't be that upsetting. But I'm used to dealing with that because my mom was that way. So, every time that I talked to her, seemed to find myself saying, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. You got to assume that they're not doing that just to upset you. Um, and I think that it's important as people living on the same planet to just give people the benefit of the doubt, you know? Um, okay, let's see what else we have to do. What are the roles of communication and empathy in creating psychological safety? I think we talked about that a lot already. So, how does sharing personal experiences or being vulnerable influence team dynamics? We talked about that somewhat earlier. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah. And I think that the process for pointing them out usually would be like the team leader would want to be that one because we talked about that somewhat last week. We also talked last week about the entire team is responsible for the culture of the team and the culture of the organization. And I think that that's true here as well. So, and I think that also if we were to apply some of the Covey stuff, we'd look at this like kind of as your sphere of influence and, what the way that how you treat others in your sphere of influence affects things. Right. Well, I mean, it's the same thing that we tell our kids, it's like if one of them is doing something that they're not supposed to, and the other rest of them just sit there and watch it, it's like, well, you're supposed to tell them not to do that. If they're playing with matches, you can't just sit there and say, "Oh, look that." Um, and so it is kind of a group accountability or a mutual accountability with that. Yes, yes, they do. But I'm talking about, like, accountability, like, that they'll go to somebody else's house, and then they're like, "Oh, well, they were watching the movie, and that's why I watched the movie that I wasn't supposed to watch?" And it's just a matter of holding each other accountable. When one of the kids is there, they should all follow directions. Anyway, so it asks I wish we had one. Okay. It says, "Do you have any perfect examples of this or personal examples of this in organizations you've been involved in?" Sharing personal experiences. So, I teach the 12 and 13-year-old Sunday school class at church, and um, I'm actually I never really have a lesson plan. I kind of peruse the information shortly before going into class, and I go by the Spirit a lot. So when I first started teaching the kids, one of the boys, he was just quiet all the time. Like he didn't care if he was there or not. I don't think he didn't like not that he I don't want to be here attitude, but just that he just didn't care if he was there. And every week we kind of shared more about ourselves, and I give them time at the beginning of class to talk about what they did that week and what they're going to do, and kind of just find out more about each other, and I find out more about them. And now he asks the most in-depth questions. He's like, why did Adam not die at this time, and why did the ark do this and that? And so we've actually built class discussions around that, um, in class, that he feels comfortable with that. And we have a boy in there that is very much like our son. He's high functioning autistic, and so he's all over the place. And so I just kind of go over and put my hand on his shoulder, like, "Alex, sit down," but he's willing to kind of laugh at himself and have a good time with it. And the other kids are easygoing about him as well. So I think that it's kind of helped with the sharing of personal experiences, and um, being willing. I'm willing to talk about why it is that I care about the things that I do in the church, or why I've seen things the way that I do. And I think that that's helped them to be willing to open up because I've opened up. Um, okay. Do you guys have any other examples of how being vulnerable may have helped, or unhelped in team dynamics in an organization? Yeah, I would agree with that. We haven't worked with you yet. We don't know. No, I think that it comes down to the being vulnerable part. I mean, if it's something that you want to build the relationship of being a brother more, then it would be being willing to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, this is how I feel in a one-on-one situation. This is how I feel, and can we go do something just as us? We're in Idaho. Let's go hunting. There's plenty of opportunities for that, right?" Um, and he may not be able to make the time right away, but I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't say, "Well, no, I don't want to go hunting with you," or "I don't want to spend time with you." Um, so I know that for Steve, a lot of times in his family, he's kind of felt like um, the outer person, just the outsider looking in. And so I mentioned something to my sister-in-law about that a couple of years ago, and since then I've noticed. I mean, his family's still not like calling each other all the time, not like my sister and I are. But his brother definitely works harder to reach out and make sure that that he knows that he cares. So you know but you have such a unique situation there, Mark, because you are low man on the totem pole in your family business. So you know are you going to stay with your family business after you graduate? Yeah, that's good experience if nothing else. I mean, if you go into another interview, you could always say, "Hey, I worked with my family and they're all still alive." And if you can work with family and they're still alive, you can work with anyone. Okay, my battery is running low, which means we should be ending soon. So one last thing, it says, what can you do as an individual to initiate effective team behavior? Cool. Yeah, yeah, that is good. Steve, did you have anything else? Okay. Do you want me to think of it for you later? Okay. Sounds good. All right. So next week's discussion, Steve, you're leading, right? Okay. Um, that sounds good. That sounds good. Um, hopefully we'll be able to make that work out. Do we want to have a closing prayer? Yay, nay? Yes? Steve. All right. Steve, will you give the closing prayer? Booger. Did you hear me? That's funny. Would you give the closing prayer? Amen. All right, guys. Have a good week. Let us know when the baby comes. All right. Bye, guys.